Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. I'm Pinky Webb. Today on the program, the fate of the controversial anti-terrorism bill. Will it lapse into law, or will President Rodrigo Duterte sign the controversial measure soon, despite opposition from human rights groups? Also, critics continue to raise concerns on possible abuses of the anti-terrorism bill and its timing during the COVID-19 pandemic. But supporters of the measure say we need stricter laws to win the fight against terrorism. National Security Advisor Hermogenes Esperon Jr. joins us live. And later, President Rodrigo Duterte wants a swift investigation over the killing of 4 military men in Sulu by police officials. We'll get an update from Philippine Army spokesperson Colonel Ramon Zagala live. The controversial anti-terrorism bill could possibly lapse into law next week, but presidential spokesperson Harry Roque earlier said the president is inclined to sign it, but groups and critics, and most recently the United Nations Human Rights Council, are asking President Rodrigo Duterte not to sign the bill, even as the president himself had previously certified the bill as urgent. The council says its passage intensifies concerns on the blurring of important distinctions between criticism, criminality, and terrorism. Let's go straight to the source of the story. We have National Security Advisor Hermogenes Esperon Jr. Secretary, welcome to the show. Good to have you again, sir.
Good morning, Pinky. Thanks for having me. Magandang umaga sa iyong mga taga-subaybay.
Maraming salamat, sir. You know, 1 week before the anti-terrorism bill lapses into law, do you know, sir, if the president will sign this, veto parts of the bill, or simply allow this to lapse into law, sir?
We will leave it to the president because anyway, he has his legal team going through it. And the Department of Justice, Secretary Guevara, has given his recommendations. And because he's a lawyer, he will also go through it. We know that it will lapse into law sometime July 8th. So we will leave it to him. But for me, I will push for it. I'll go for it.
Do you know, though, sir? I mean, two things. When was the last time you spoke to the president? And did he express any inhibitions about the bill or complete support on the bill, sir?
Oh, I talked to my fellow cabinet members about it, and he said so far he has no objections to the provisions of the proposed anti-terrorism act or bill. And by the way, he also certified it as a priority bill. So we have been really pushing for this anti-terrorism act. It has been in the legislative mill for 3 years, more than 3 years. And since Congress had to go on recess, CNJ adjournment last June, they submitted it to the president. Marami ang nagsasabi na we are rushing it despite the pandemic, but it's just that the Congress had to adjourn and they had to submit it.
I guess, sir, that goes into yung tinatawag na timing of the bill. I know that senators have said that they've passed this since February. This bill has been around since 3 years at yung Congress, yung House of Representatives po nga had to pass it because the President certified it as urgent. But let's talk about some provisions of the bill. Secretary, help us understand the situation because there are certain fears and possible concerns about what is possibly contentious parts. Yung pong una, yung Anti-Terrorism Council, which is part of Section 79. Ang tanong ko po sa inyo, Secretary, yung bang ATC na composed of 9 members of the cabinet, no? Can the ATC, sir, order the arrest of persons who are merely suspected of terrorism, sir?
No, the Anti-Terrorism Council uh, is not a judicial body or a quasi-judicial body. It can only order the arrests after proscriptions or after designations. Proscription is taking to the court, to the Court of Appeals, and filing petitions against organizations and personalities uh, so that they will be listed as terrorists. The designation, on the other hand, are what would come from the Anti-Money Laundering Council, and these are organizations that could be supporting terrorist acts. Designation also refers to the organizations that are already proscribed or listed in the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism. Mayroon ng mga organization kasi ngayon which are foreign based or regional based that are already listed. By resolutions of the United Nations Security Council, we are encouraged, and we are bound, in fact, to follow those designations. I'm referring to resolution number 1313. So the ATC is
So,
not
ang ibig sabihin
allowed
po
to
nito,
simply declare people as terrorists.
yeah. So, kailangan po may prescription or may designation. The designation, as you earlier described, sir, and classified that as the United Nations already designated a particular group as terrorists. So, hindi po sila very clear, sir. The ATC cannot order the arrest of persons kahit na po suspected sila ng terrorism. Wala pong kapangyarihan na gano'n ang ATC.
Yes, right. That power only comes only after the organization is proscribed. We have to go to court first. Even the matter of surveillance of organizations and personalities has to be by order of court, and
Right.
we apply for it.
The Court of Appeals. The
Yeah.
Court of Appeals, no, Secretary?
The Court of Appeals, yes.
Okay. Let me do a follow-up on that, sir. I think this is part of Section 25. Ang tanong ko po, also to clear this up, can the ATC, sir, may kapangyarihan ho ba ang ATC to designate persons or organizations as terrorists? Can they move towards that particular direction, sir?
Yes, designation by way of complying with the resolutions of the United Nations Security Council, or now the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism. Once we
Secretary, is
have
it possible for you to give us an example?
Once we have proscribed organizations, then that is the only time that we designate agents. We designate agents with written authorities to arrest, because you cannot just allow anybody to be conducting arrest. This is a very technical job, and so they must be trained for it. Hindi kung sino-sino na lang ang nag-aaresto in connection with terrorism.
Yeah. But just to clarify that, Secretary, yung pong written authority ay manggagaling pa rin sa NTC. Tama ho?
Yes, the written authority, because some people have to be designated as members of what I would think would be a counterterrorism group, which we in the Anti-Terrorism Council would have to designate. Some units would have to be designated and given written authority to perform tasks on anti-terrorism and counter-terrorism.
I guess just moving forward on the ATC, sir, As I mentioned a while ago, ito po ay ang bahagi ng ATC, I believe, are 9 cabinet members. Ano po, Sec? The question, I guess, is, or the concern would be, isn't there too much power possibly vested on the ATC, sir, knowing that these are 9 cabinet members and the issue that this can be politicized, sir?
It can be politicized, but there are a lot of safeguards. For one, there will be a joint oversight committee by Congress, and we report our arrests to the Commission on Human Rights, as well as to the courts. And by the way, after the
Right.
passage of this law,
Right.
we will also craft our implementing rules and regulations, and this will also be submitted to Congress. And so there goes again the balance, the counter, the check, and the safeguards. So it could not be arbitrary.
But if you,
Besides, I don't think terrorism should be politicized. This is a security matter that we should address. This is not about exercise of
Absolutely.
civil and political rights, because terrorism is not activism, and activism is not terrorism. That is where the disinformation or misinformation comes in. Some people would insist that we would be infringing on civil and political rights. No, that is prohibited under the definitions of terrorism, Section 4, which states that it shall not include
right.
advocacy, protest, dissent, stoppage of work, industrial or mass actions, and other similar exercises of civil and political rights. Nakasaad mismo yan sa Article 4 in the definition of terrorism. And so it does not include people going to the streets if they have legitimate grievances and the exercise of course, freedom of expression.
Secretary, we're going to have to take a very short break, sir. We'll be right back. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, National Security Advisor Hermogenes Esperon. Sir, I want to take off from what you earlier said that ito nga po ay provided that terrorism, as defined in this section, shall not include advocacy, protest, dissent, stoppage of work, industrial or mass action, and other similar exercises of civil and political rights, sir. However, Secretary, there's still something after that, which are not intended to cause death or serious physical harm to a person, to endanger a person's life, or to create a serious risk to public safety. Let me just give you an example, sir.
Yes.
In a situation that there is protest, dapat po hindi ito part of terrorism, ano po. However, sir, paano po pag dun sa protest na yon, nagkaroon ng nakahanap ang pulis ng bomba, a bomb explodes, meron pong bumaril, nag-cause po ng harm at danger sa lives of people, can that be classified as terrorism, sir?
We have to look further into that. Bigla kasing linagyan mo ng bomba doon sa mga protesters usually that does not happen
Hindi,
anymore.
sakali lang,
Linagyan
sir,
mo ng
sakali.
bomba, but let us go to the definition of terrorism. It enumerates the acts. Number one, loss of life, endangering life, extensive damage to public and private properties, destruction of critical infrastructure, and deployment of chemical, biological, nuclear, and radiological weapons and explosives. But ito ang mas importante dyan na part. This is the more important part of it. When the purpose of such act is to intimidate the general public or a segment thereof, create an atmosphere of or spread a message of fear, to provoke or influence by intimidation the government or any of its international organization, or seriously destabilize or destroy the fundamental political, economic, or social structures of the country, or create a public emergency, or seriously undermine public safety. Hindi lang kung protesta yan. So we go back to your example. Nagpro-protesta sila doon. At biglang may nakitang bomba, iimbestigahin natin yon because there is also that element of motive na titignan mo kung terrorism. Ngayon, kung yung protesta na yon ay umabot na sa malakihan at may mga armas na talaga, then they are already intimidating government. That's no longer freedom of expression. That is no longer exercise of civil and political rights. That is already intimidating government and creating public disorder, and that will endanger the general public. Ibang usapan na yon. So I do not think our protesters are of that kind. And so if they are just expressing their dissent, their ideas, legal expression of what they have against injustices, we allow that. We would even protect them to be able to do that. Activism is not terrorism, and terrorism
Secretary,
is not
the
activism.
Human Rights Chief. Yeah. So let me bring this in. The Human Rights Chief, sir, presented her report on the situation in the Philippines, and she said that there are very serious problems with human rights in the country. She went on to say that human rights defenders, and I quote, sir, human rights defenders are routinely smeared as terrorists and enemies of the state. In fact, she went to say that this heightens concern about the blurring distinction between criticism, criminality, and terrorism, urging the president actually not to sign the anti-terrorism bill. What are your thoughts on that, sir?
You must be referring to the 44th Human Rights Council meeting in Geneva the other day, where Madame Bachelet repeated her charges on human rights violations in the Philippines. I was watching that, and I also saw 30 countries, 30 delegations speaking in favor of the Philippines on what we are doing on illegal drugs, as well as on protecting journalists and uplifting the socioeconomic status of our people. 30 of the speakers favored the Philippines. 7 spoke against the Philippines. 2 were neutral. And 1 was absent. Out of the 41, we had 30 favoring us. And in that hearing, it was very clear. The message was very clear that sovereign countries must be given the latitude to solve domestic problems as long as they adhere to international standards. There was even that report that which is quite bloated and exaggerated, that the deaths in the anti-drugs campaign reached 60,000. And yet, many of the speakers also vouched for the Philippines that indeed we should be given the latitude to address the problem because it's a big problem. There was even that speaker who said that 60, so many people were arrested because of the COVID-19, and that's violative of human rights. Well, we leave you to judge those actions on the matter of apprehending people who have been violating our quarantine rules. But by and large, I think it worked to our advantage that up to now we have only about 1,200 deaths out of COVID for populations that are, for a population of 110,000, which is about 1/3 of the population of the United States. And so if we have cautioned people not to go out of their homes, that worked well for us.
Very quickly, Secretary, I hope you don't mind. ito pong shooting ng 4 soldiers in Holo by the police. Of course, you were AFP chief of staff as well. There are 2 different accounts. I know I'm sure you're aware of that. I just want to bring this in, Sir. Senator Kiko Pangilinan was saying that nakakabahala ito, yung pong nangyari doon sa Holo, Sulu. Ngayon pa lang, na hindi pa batas ang anti-terrorism bill, may nangyayari ng ganito. Ano na lang ang laban ng ordinaryong mamamayan?
Napakalayo naman ng koneksyon. Mayroong pagkakamali doon, and we are having the National Bureau of Investigation investigate that as agreed upon by both the armed forces as well as the Philippine National Police. Yung mga ganong incidents would not be the rule of the day. In fact, kami nga nagagalit yan. Ako, former Army Commander, siyempre medyo may emotion yan. I was in the wake last night and I could understand the emotions that go with it. But that should not be classified as one example of how our police personnel would be treating civilians. As I said, we have to give written authority to organizations and personnel who would be acting as deputies or organizations that would go against terrorists. This is not the kind of incident that we are referring to. Hindi ganito. Let us wait for the report. Anyway, this is not the kind of example that we would term as illegal arrest and undue harassment of the populace. No. Wag nating i-connecta doon. Wag na nating katungan yung nangyari doon. At meron namang report na lalabas dyan.
All right. National Security Advisor, Hermogenes Esperon. Sir, I hope we have a part 2 because marami pa ho sa time. Pwedeng pag-usapan on other topics. I hope I'll be able to interview you again. In the meantime, sir, thank you again for your time.
Yeah, thank you again, Pinky, for having me. We can talk about terrorism, also about the National Task Force on the ending the local communist armed conflict, and so many other things. Even cybersecurity, because that's also part of my job anyway. So thank you again for this opportunity to be able to explain
I hope to
parts
catch you
of
again,
the
sir.
anti-terrorism act. Thank you.
Maraming salamat, sir. We'll be taking a short break. Coming up, we get to know more updates on the killing of 4 soldiers in Sulu. Philippine Army spokesperson Ramon Zagala will join us after the break.